Wrestling friends, this podcast is brought to you by Spartan Combat. Spartan Combat is a wrestling clothing company who's doing a giveaway as we speak on Instagram. They're giving away 2 really sweet backpacks. Go to Spartan X Apparel and click on the post that has the 2 backpacks in it. You'll see all the information you need to register for the giveaway. That's Spartan X Apparel on Instagram. Spartan X Apparel, doing a giveaway right now for 2 sweet book bags. All right, folks, let's get to the show.
And where do you find that mentality? Because not everyone does have it, that mentality to, when things are getting tough, I got to dig a little bit deeper and make sure we get the job done. You learn that from hours in the wrestling room when it's not your day, but you have to figure out how to make it work, right? How to get that next takedown when you feel like crap, or you're wrestling a guy that's better than you. How do you figure that out?
We can endure anything and adapt and pivot and change. Wrestling gave us that ability.
I would say nothing in life has impacted me more than the things wrestling has taught me in terms of self-reflection, resilience.
Toughness. Some guys have it, some guys don't.
Adversity, 100%. How to pick myself up and be a man after I failed.
And everything that has shaped my life and where I'm at today would not be there without the values and basically the lessons I've learned through the sport of wrestling.
For me, wrestling saved my life because it allowed me to focus and channel my energy.
We're fortunate if you wrestled, because if you wrestled, natural talent helps, but it's 5% of the ingredient. It pales in comparison to heart and technique and effort.
It humbled me, taught me humility. Nothing can humble you more than wrestling. I think it's the learning to adapt, right? You learn how to adapt, you learn how to solve problems.
You know, if I look back at my time I spent wrestling, if it gave me one thing more than anything else, it's mental toughness.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Wrestling Changed My Life podcast. This is your host, Ryan Warner. It's Monday, December 20th. The collegiate duels begin today on Rockfin. I can't wait. Some of the best teams in college wrestling will be scrapping today and tomorrow in a duel-style format. But before we get there, we have business, folks. John Dergo, the great John Dergo, is on the podcast today. John was an Illinois football god. He was actually the National Football Player of the Year his senior year. And with stats like this, who could blame him? He rushed for 3,000 yards and scored 52 touchdowns. On the wrestling mat, he was a 2-time state champ, but people could not believe that Dergo wasn't going to play football in college. But he didn't, folks. He wrestled for the University of Illinois, was a Big Ten champ, an All-American, and today he's a businessman out in Charlotte, North Carolina. Really enjoyed this podcast. This is an old throwback, an Illinois episode, so I hope you enjoy it. Fan of the week is our friend Jace Britton, a 9-year-old who wore his Wrestling Changed My Life sweatshirt to Mount Rushmore, and we love him for that. Thank you, Jace. Greatly appreciate your support, my friend. As always, Wrestling Changed My Life, proudly presented by Spartan Combat. Go to SpartanCombat.com to support this show. And that's it. Let's give it up for John Dergo. Peace! Quick caveat, folks. We pick up this interview with John Dergo recapping one of the most impactful games of his career, I have to imagine. It was his senior year. Morris, his high school, is number 2 in the state. They're playing Joliet Catholic, the number 1 team in the state, ranked number 3 in the country. And Dergo has a game of all games. But that's where we picked this one up, folks. Enjoy.
And you played them the year before, right? When you were a junior in the finals?
Yeah. So actually, sophomore year, we lost to them in the quarterfinals of the playoffs. Junior year, we lost to them in the state finals. And then senior year, we played them in the quarterfinals as well.
I mean, and for folks who are listening, you can go to YouTube and first play of the game, you hit a run, touchdown, last play of the game, you have a pick, save the game. It's like, God, I mean, that must have been just incredible. What kind of hype do you remember for that game leading up to it that week?
Oh, it was really everything. I mean, one, it was with Joliet Catholic Academy. It was our big rivals, 30 minutes down the road. So one, there was from the signage to the interviews. I remember having to go up to the Chicago Tribune and do a photo shoot, and so did some of our other team members. But we also had that Friday off of school, so we literally got to drive around town and see people tailgating like it was a college game day, literally out in front, out around at the park across from our high school. And yeah, I mean, you saw a line. You saw more people there than I ever have in my entire life by 5 o'clock at night, and there was still 2.5 hours left till game time. So it was pretty impressive there.
Yeah, man, I love those towns that really just go all in on sports. And the cool part to me is that your dad was your coach for high school football. Was he also a wrestling coach?
Yeah, so my dad was the wrestling coach from 1989 until I graduated. The year I graduated was his last year, because he was really looking forward to come and travel and watch me wrestle in college. So coaching wrestling just wasn't gonna do it anymore, and he'd done it for so long. And then my senior year of football was actually his first year as the varsity head coach. So he coached at the lower levels. He was very instrumental in one, teaching the Morris way, the tradition at the lower levels, the youth levels, getting kids to come out. I mean, he was the guy in the hallways, making sure kids were out for the team, but they were also having fun doing it. It wasn't life or death, like it seemed like on the varsity sometimes. So it really captured the right kids, the good kids, and taught them how to work hard. And then there was a big transition, which is very unique. It's very interesting about my sports career. I always had, going into my senior year, and we'll probably get into this later, but same with when Coach Heffernan took over for Coach Johnson, it was very similar. Coach Dan Darlington, who was our football coach who built the Morris program from the late 70s all the way up until my senior year, he ended up moving on from the program, and that's when my dad took over. We literally could not find anyone to coach the football team. I mean, you're stepping into such big shoes. My dad would have me on the phone with like coaches that he would have me beg to be our coach for that year, because it was me, it was all my best friends, and my dad was a youth coach all those years. So he coached all my class through Pinto League baseball, T-ball, and all the way through all the wrestling, baseballs, the soccers that we played all our whole lives. So he really felt like it wasn't just me that was looking for a coach. It was all of his other kids too, that he took a lot of pride in coaching and developing in sports his whole career.
So Morris had a big football tradition even before you started playing for them?
Yeah. We were, we had a couple, a couple big games with Geneseo back in the day. Mm-hmm. I do remember that. We won state championships in the 70s and 1980, 1984. So that's really when he started the program and popped off. And we had a couple runners up in between those years from 1984 to my year in 2005. Quite a bit of second places, but yeah, we've always been a staple in the state playoffs. We're right there battling with the best of them. So
why would no one want to take that over then? I don't get that.
There's a lot more to it. I mean, there was administration stuff. There was, but the large part of it was no one wanted to fill Dan Darlington's shoes. That's really it. I mean, you come. That's a tough job to do. And mm-hmm. There was not a lot of people that wanted to do it. I know that for sure. And there was even little conversations between my dad and a lot of coaches reaching out after that junior year to have us come play for them. Lincoln Way East, the Providences, the schools like that say, hey, we'll come to school here for your senior year and play, keep that football alive, and then you could wrestle for our wrestling team too. So we had a lot of discussions like that, but in the end, my dad decided he couldn't leave the kids that we grew up with. He grew up coaching. He wasn't going to do that for them.
So these are all just your buds, and you guys are out there having a good time, it sounded like.
Yeah. Worked, close friends, still close with all of them today. You grow up, anything, all my college buddies or wrestling teammates are my close buddies too. You form that bond that really does last a lifetime with a lot of them. And so it was, we were all in it together. And my dad knew that too. And
it came out, I mean, it just doesn't seem like it could have gone any better, for your senior year in terms of the team and then your individual accolades. It's well known that you may be one of the best Illinois high school football players ever, but that you weren't recruited a lot in college. Is it fair to say you weren't recruited at all, or just wasn't the attention from the schools you wanted to go to? And how did you process all of that?
No, it was, I really wasn't recruited at all. That's a fact. Yeah. I mean, we had Charlie Weiss come into our school when he was at Notre Dame. We had Penn State there, recruiters from all the Big Ten schools. We even had Clemson up because my high school teammate was getting recruited by Clemson. They were at games. But really, it was a lot of Coach Darlington, I think, assumed I was more tailored or looking towards the wrestling route. Mm-hmm. So it wasn't really a push for me. And that's okay. I think that's what the bottom line was. And that's all right. I really wasn't the biggest fan of football as a sport in general either. I mean, there was a lot of pet peeves I had with that sport, like all the way down to putting on your helmet. I couldn't stand it. And a lot of small things like that. It was really just, I did it for, one, I was pretty good at it. I trained hard at it. My speed, everything. My weight training was all tailored for it. Track, I did track. I qualified for state in the 400, and that was all just training for football and whatnot too. But it was really just to do it for my teammates and the town in general. If you grew up in Morris, you played football, and that was, what I was going to continue to do and see it all the way out, really.
Yeah. I mean, but even when you were starting to really light it up on a national level your senior year, because I mean, you were National Player of the Year, and I was looking at the NHSCA players who have won that. It's like Kyler Murray, Leonard Fournette, and I'm like, John Dergo. But I just can't get over how stubborn these coaches can be. And it reminds me of Gabe Dean's been on the show a number of times. Mm-hmm. He obviously wrestled at Cornell, but he was a high school football star too. And he got one call to Georgia Tech. He walked down there and they said, "You're too short. Get out of here." And they didn't even let him try out. And he drove all the way down there and he's like, "You know what? Screw this. I'm just going to go wrestle." And so it's not surprising that they were that stubborn, but it kind of is when you look at the names you're in that list with,
Yeah, right. I see some of those too, the Tebows and some of those guys. But it was just one of those things. It was more doing it for other people than my own self-enjoyment. So that's kind of what it was. But yeah, it was a couple good years there. Junior year was 2,400 yards rushing, but the thing is everyone talks about the offensive side of the ball. My favorite thing to do was play defense, and I was really good at that. I thought if there was anywhere I could play at the collegiate level, it would be a defensive back or safety or something like that. And I wasn't a bad kicker either. So
that's the crazy thing. I was like, wait, is this guy kicking field goals and points after as well?
Yeah, I was the kicker and the punter too. But I would tell you what, I could have a 99-yard touchdown run. I found more enjoyment than the few field goals I made that year, or being, I don't know what I was. I think I was like 58 for 60 in extra point attempts. So I take as much pride in those as anything.
Dude, that's awesome. I love to hear that. that you were just kind of involved with it because it's a community thing and you had friends that did it. And, you read stories about kids dressing up as John Dergo for Halloween when you were back there. So it's just like, I don't think people can realize the hype unless they were around for it. But, as you mentioned, you chose wrestling and thank God for all of us. So you wrestled for the great Mark Johnson and, your senior year of high school, I believe they won the Big Ten.
Right. Yeah. So, that was the year, Bird, Glenn, Reynolds was there. Just top to bottom, they had so many good wrestlers. It was a very solid team. Ott was there a lot, and Poeta and Tirapelli and whatnot. And that was just from top to bottom, a solid team. And one to really look up to as I was going in there. That's what the expectations were. So we were able to kind of start there. This is the expectations. We can compete with the best in the Big Ten. We can win the Big Ten. So let's get after it and try and do so.
What was the Mark Johnson recruiting visit like?
Oh gosh, that's a great question. It was, I got a few good ones. It was, I didn't hear from Illinois for 2 weeks. So I'm hearing from all these other schools, Nebraska's, some Ivy League schools, Purdue's, Michigan State's, and schools like that. And finally he calls, he said, I'm going to be there tomorrow. So get ready. And my family, my house isn't anything spectacular, ripped up wooden floors. My dad pretty much built the whole top half of the house himself. He's a school teacher, 4 kids, didn't have a lot of money. So everything he did was himself. Or a couple uncles helped out and family friends, but he literally built this house himself. So my mom and dad start cleaning up for him, and I haven't seen anyone clean up the house like this ever, probably in my life. Well, he stops over that next day and comes in. We show him the house, and we had a garage, and we have a 1971 Chevelle in the garage that was like a antique muscle car. We didn't drive it often. It was like the coolest thing our family had, right? Well, we had the Illinois wrestling sticker on the back of the windshield, the back window. So we show, and Coach Johnson, obviously there was a scholarship money involved, and Coach Johnson opens up the door. He sees the car. He goes, I might have to pull back some of this scholarship money that I'm giving. It was like just this one car, but aside from that, everything was good. He sat down. He presented me with an opportunity, and my mother started crying, my dad, and I called him the next day, said I'm 100% in. I can't wait to wrestle for University of Illinois.
Your mom started crying. It was that impactful.
Yeah. I mean, and it goes a little, the family knows Coach Johnson. My grandfather donated to him. Coach Johnson wrestled against my uncle, pinned him a couple times. And then my grandfather also donated, and we don't come from a lot of money. So if my grandfather's given $1,500 or $2,000 back in, I think 1980, or when Coach Johnson was training
the Olympics, 80.
Yeah, right around that time. My grandfather gave him all he could, and
wow.
So going, and that's just a little bit of the backstory. And then my mother just thinks the world of Coach Mark Johnson and the wrestling program, and not a lot of kids or not a lot of people go to college in my family. My dad did, obviously, and I think my uncle did. 2 of my uncles did, but that was just a big thing for my mother to have that and see that opportunity, knowing that that's an option.
Yeah. Well, there's not many full rides in wrestling given out, and if you believe the papers, that's what happened, and pretty amazing because you were part of that class. Jimmy Kennedy, another one of my childhood idols. I tell people he was just like a wrecking machine back in the day. And was it Sean or Donnie Reynolds was with you on that first class?
Sean was actually the incoming. Sean's actually a year older than me, but I can't remember. I think he was, for some reason, he was like transferring from maybe Parkland College to community college. So I think he was down there doing some training with the guys in the summer of the year before, but he was technically an incoming freshman with me. Yeah. So Sean was, and then Brian came a few years after. So got to know Brian too. And then Donnie was there. I got to train with Donnie maybe once or twice in the room until he had that season-ending injury that kept him out, which is pretty much the reason why I ended up wrestling as a true freshman. I was the next guy up, so we were able to fill in hit at 174 for his injury, and then I was able to go 184.
And that weight class in the Big Ten is no joke. And you get into that Big Ten grind in January, it's like every week you're hitting hammers. But like early in the year, you had some good open tournaments. You won the UNI Open. And at this point, are you starting to think you might redshirt, or is it never even crossing your mind, that you might come out of redshirt, or are you in your mind fully committed to redshirt in that season?
No. Actually, Jimmy Kennedy kind of announced that he was not going to be redshirting that year to help out the team. And Coach Johnson sat with me and said, hey, we still want you to redshirt. And I said, no problem. I really needed it because in actuality, during high school, I only was on the mat for 2.5 months of the year.
No way.
Yeah. So I was technically, and my mindset was just behind.
You weren't wrestling like Fargo in the summer. You were all football.
No, I was track. It was all for football. So I kind of did everything backwards. So I was a state qualifier in track, like I mentioned, and I trained track, which was helping me for weightlifting and football. I was probably the only 200-pound runner in the 400 out there in the state track meet. But and then all summer was weight training, agility, speed training, like combine training for football, and then roll right into the football season. So my senior year, I didn't even get one practice under my belt before I wrestled our first dual meet, because it was the weekend after
Thanksgiving,
and we played the state tournament or the state football game the 2 days after Thanksgiving.
Yeah. That's a tradition in Illinois. Everyone's at home, and they, on Friday and Saturday throw on the games and watch the high school finals. But yeah, that's a lot of teams' first weekend of wrestling too, is that Saturday after Thanksgiving, so you're literally going into it, no practice since the state meet last February.
Yeah. So I dropped a couple pounds, went out there at 189 and wrestled actually a state qualifier, one of my old teammates, Garrett Washington from Oswego. So I do remember that. But to get back to what we were saying with, Coach Johnson or whatnot, what were we getting back to?
Just that he was kind of sitting you down saying, hey, Jimmy's coming out of redshirt. So, we want you to redshirt.
Yep. So he continued to say, hey, we're going to keep you in redshirt, and so on and so forth. And then that's when really the Donnie Reynolds situation came about, where he didn't look like he was going to be able to compete. And then they I think it was right before Midlands, they decided, hey, it's time to, you want to do it? And I said, yes, so let's go for it. But I really could have used that year probably just to get my mind and, the technique and a little bit more of the college wrestling, moving your hands, moving your feet, going out there to score points, and got that mentality solidified a little bit further. But hey, whatever. I'm one guy. It's always been about the team with me. So if the team needs it, I don't care what I have to sacrifice. It's getting done to help out the team.
I love that. And your first Big Ten duel was against Jake Herbert, if I'm reading correctly. And then then the Big Ten season's on us, and it's January, it's February, and as the high school season's ending, you guys are still in the thick of it. What memories do you have of that Big Ten grind from your true freshman year once you guys started getting into the dual meet season?
Yeah, it was, you go from, I think I was majored by Herbert that first dual meet at home. Just the losses were really glaring to me. It was I wasn't used to losing like that, and trying to figure out where I was falling short. And I mentioned one area why I wasn't not enough mat time. That was one, but really a mental preparation was much needed. So that was one thing I do remember about that Big Ten season, that January through February. It was a grind. I mean, Herbert to Pasillo, Roger Kish was there, a couple other good guys. Joe Williams with Michigan State was there. And it was just knowing how I had to be ready to compete every single match. Every single match now, the way I started thinking about it was almost a national championship match. I mean, you're wrestling these guys, Friday and then Sunday back to back. You got to be ready to compete at a national championship level, or you're gonna take a loss. And that was one of the glaring things to me. There's no more gimmies out here in the college wrestling world. Be ready to go at all times.
And when you talk about the mental side of it, how do you mean that? Are you thinking like you weren't visualizing enough, or you weren't confident enough in yourself?
Yeah, I was worried more about how I felt than going out there and competing hard. It was, how are you feeling? And Mike Poeta, when I listened to his when he was on your podcast, and he was one person that really kind of helped me around it. And that was one thing he mentioned as well, is just how to get past how you're feeling. Every wrestler deals with it. Everyone with that anxiety, that feeling of the pressure, everyone has it out there. It's just who deals with it the best and can put it aside, not show emotion, and let that consume your energy is really the key. And so that was one thing I started to focus on. Then, some bad decisions on my part going through and dropping that weight class to 174 wasn't a good idea on my part, but the coaches said, hey, do what you think is best. It's either spot is yours, 174, 184. So it's really no one to blame but myself. When I got down to that next weight, I wasn't competing well. And then you saw me kind of put things together as a senior, where I was, mentally I was going out there and all I thought about was scoring the next point. I didn't care how tired I was. It was just, okay, I got the takedown. How do I get near fall or cut him to get the next takedown to, separate myself even further from this guy.
So that weight cut, that was a self-inflicted cut.
Yeah, it was. Coach Johnson came up to me again and said, hey, my sophomore and junior year, and said, it's up to you. So I sit there and think, what's going to make the team better? I think I could do better at 74. And then by junior year, we had Blanton coming in at 84. And it was self-inflicted. And I thought I would be a little bit bigger for that weight class, when actually my body just didn't, it just didn't, I didn't cut the weight probably the right way or the best way. And I just couldn't perform dropping all that weight.
You had to be north of 200 at, definitely in the summer, but maybe even during the season at times.
Yeah. The good thing about my body is once I got it down, it was fine, but I really shrunk my body. I mean, I was a different wrestler from when you saw me let's say in early November to, February. I was a completely different person. I was just completely shrunken down, which a lot of guys do, but I just don't think my body was, willing to let me wrestle hard for 7 minutes down at that weight class. But like you said, I was over 200 pounds in the summers and lifting strong and heavy. And then when it came time to suck in that weight, it just, I guess it fell off in muscle, right?
Yeah. And that's, you hear people, all the time from your era and certainly before talk about that. And not that there's not a lot of cutting going on now. I'm sure there's a ton of it. I think we like to fool ourselves that it's getting better, but it sounds like, you kind of came to your senses, you go up, but before you head into your senior year, the legend retires. Mark Johnson.
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
Was that was that shocking or was that expected?
No, it shocked us. I mean, we had a meeting and, right after the NCAA tournaments, we got the week off for Chris or for
Spring break.
Spring break. Yep. And came back. We had a team meeting like we always do, and he broke it to us right there. It was short and sweet, as those things always are. He could only say so much, and then our athletic trainer got up and said he's moving on, and it was like everyone's leaving us, right? But it's one thing, as shocking as it was. We looked over and we had still Coach Hunter, Perry, and Coach Heff right there in our corner, and then Mikey Boetta sticking around, and they knew, okay. Was I a little nervous that possibly someone from the outside could come in? Yeah, but with Heff and Perry there, Perry being a national champ, and Heff there for so long, you knew it was going to be given to an Illinois guy at that point. And and still to this day, Coach Johnson, when I've seen him following up, he mentions first things, you're one of the guys I really felt bad for when I made that decision. He's like, I felt bad for you and your dad and your mom.
Yeah.
And that's why he's just one of the greatest guys ever, because I take that to heart, and he took it personally, but it was just something he had to do for him and his family and his career. And but I do, he always does bring that up to me. I do still feel bad, but everything works out how it's supposed to.
He is the ultimate just relationship guy. I talked to him last week, and he remembers this, the school I went to, or that we ordered Harris Pizza. It's just like he remembers everything. And I think a lot of people know the contribution he made, but I don't think a lot of people realize how bad of a spot Illinois was in the early 90s, in that, he had taken Oregon State to a second place or Oregon State got second the year after he left. Les Gutches was there. Like, he was building at Oregon State. He leaves to come back to Illinois, and they hadn't won like a Big Ten dual meet in, a number of years. Right. And then 2 or 3 years later, you got Ernest Benion's a national champ. You got, Marinetti won the same year at Carver, and he was an Iowa guy, or he was coach at Iowa. So, like, the legend of Mark Johnson, I every time an Illinois guy gets on here, I just start talking about him. But the one thing a lot of people don't realize is, from what I hear, how intense he was in the room, because you see him on the outside, he's like, relationship guy, he's smiling, but I guess he also had another side where he could get fiery in the room. He could get intense. Do you have any stories or any memories from that?
Oh, I got some stories. I don't know if you can share, but let's just say he was pretty heated. There was one time he had me by the shirt because he thought I did something wrong, which it ended up not really being me, but it was during the summer camps, and someone did something that he told us not to do. And, it wasn't anything too serious, but the fact that he told everyone not to do it, and it was blamed on me. He had me by the shirt, and, let's say he might've punched the glass of the ice arena glass really mad at me. And I'm terrified. He's face to face, and he has me by the shirt collar, and he's hitting the glass and saying, I told you not to do this. I told you not to do that. And there's so many of those stories with Coach Johnson. He was the fearless leader that you had. You always wanted in your corner. I mean, you look over, and if you're going to war and you see that guy in your corner, you're like, I feel good. I'm confident that things are going to work out in my favor. And that was how he was, and how he was in the practice room too. It was, he get a little worked up and yell something, say something. But the great thing about Coach Johnson was, it was, whether he had an issue with you maybe you didn't do something right or wrong, it was over. He gave you he lectured, and then that was it. It was move forward, get better from there. And he did that really, really well. And I'm more up his alley when it comes to that getting emotional and getting fired up. So when he did it, I just ate that stuff up. I loved it.
Oh, it's awesome, man. Yeah, he I don't know if this was your era or not, but not rumors, this is a story that he at the Cliff King tournament in Vegas, he's like worried about his hotel room getting jacked. And he pulls up after one of the rounds of the tournament and he sees the hotel room door is open at his hotel. And I guess it's kind of like a questionable hotel. So as he's pulling up, he like almost comes to a stop, gets out of the car, runs up to his room because he thinks that someone's jacking his stuff. Turns out it's the house cleaner. And now his car's rolling across the parking lot.
Yeah, no, he all sorts of stuff like that. I don't recall that one, but it might have happened one of the years I wasn't there. But that's exactly him. React first and then deal with everything else after it. Sometimes.
I think that might have been maybe a Terrapelli story. So early 2000s. I couldn't remember if it was him or Poeta, but yeah. And so, obviously you had a great career, Big Ten champ, All-American, and, you really were one of the faces of Illinois wrestling, but we got to go back to some of the IHSA battles because I was looking at the brackets today and didn't realize you went to OT every finals match you had at Assembly Hall. And one was against Kernance, went to OT in the finals your junior year. And then your senior year also went to the OT, but I didn't know the wrestler's name. But I mean, just in general, when you think back to Assembly Hall and your trips down there, what kind of memories do you have that really jump out to you?
Oh, that was, at the time, and you can recall, high school state was like the pinnacle for an Illinois high school wrestler. And just to follow up with what you said, I did actually pull away from my guy's senior year. I think I ended up with a 10-point win in that finals. But the junior year, it was a close one against Jim Kernat. That was, but yeah, I mean, to go down Assembly Hall is what's called at that time. I know it's changed its name a few times since, but to go down for Assembly Hall, wrestling in that arena, so many great wrestlers were there, and IHSA tournaments. I mean, I could count. I'd been going to that tournament, and I wrote down every name, filled out the books, the bracket books. My uncle filled out every name for, I don't know, 8 years before I got into high school, 6 or 8 years. Spent every session watching, and it was just that's where Coach Johnson was. He was there watching. That's where coaches came to watch you, and you were competing with, like you said, guys you even looked up to or thought highly about, the Jimmy Kennedys, the guys that were winning multiple state championships, Fanthorpes. You could go down the list.
Poeta was lightning at that tournament.
Yeah, Poeta was a two-timer, and these guys were all guys you competed around through IKWF, and now it's like the same guys winning the same stuff here in the IHSA state finals. So it was cool in that sense.
That Friday night session when it was the AA quarters, and that was like the first time sectional champs were getting together because it wasn't seeded. I tell people that it's like, that was like the Friday morning of the NCAAs, but Friday night at Assembly Hall was just, the whole crowd was going crazy. And there was always some quarterfinal matchup where it was like 1 and 2 in the state. And you're thinking, how in God's name did they not seed this? And even worse, if your guy didn't make the semis, you were out back then, so there was all kinds of walkovers. It was chaos.
Yeah, no. And you actually nailed it. For my sophomore year, I lost to Chris Potter. He was returning 2-time state champ returning state champ. I'm sorry. And we were ranked number 1 and 2, and we met in the quarterfinals.
There you go. So, see, that match, the whole arena is on their feet for that one.
Yeah, they really were. I mean, the whole crowd was into that match. I had a couple big moves early and ended up losing at the end. But and then you realize I have 2 huge matches to wrestle tomorrow just to get into the top 6. So you have to do that against a couple of guys that were returning state placers or whatnot. So yeah, you had to really get tough and make sure that you still came back and competed and won third. Like Mike, I think mentioned that on his, is how important it was that he came back and took third place at those tournaments, even though your ultimate goal can no longer be achieved. It shows your character to come back and be tough and win that third place.
Yeah, he was a Fargo champ his freshman and sophomore year, but didn't win a match in the championship bracket at Assembly Hall. Like, that's crazy. Or, yeah, I think it was something like that. It was like first round losses. And obviously, like you said, came back to get third. But man, like it's just good to know that someone who had the success you did there also kind of like put that tournament on a pedestal. Because for me, it was like I put it on way too high of a pedestal. Looking back now, it was a huge mistake. But back then, it was hard to resist.
Yeah, no, it's what it's all about. We get to be in the big arena, go from the gymnasiums that we do and having, I don't know, a couple hundred people maybe watching you. You know, wrestling, the sport, and it's evolving even more now than ever. I think highly thankful to the women's wrestling, which is great to have. And some of stuff like this, even like your podcast, is huge for the growth of our sport. And you've had some of the best guys on, but it just, when it comes to popularity, it isn't always number one, right? It's not like your football games, your basketball games, you get a couple thousand people in to watch a high school game. It was a couple hundred people, and that's why it was so important to us, and why it was the big stage is because it was the first time you're in a huge arena, and you're unless you wrestled at some of the off-season freestyle stuff or whatnot, but you were in the big arena, a lot of people watching, 10,000 people at least watching you. Watching you.
And at the one end of the arena, you had the single A fans who were always going crazy. Then the four in the middle were double A. So man, now they split it up. I don't know if you know that, like A is at one time, then double A is by itself, then triple A is by itself. So they're not in there together for most of the sessions anymore. So it's way different.
Yeah, that's the way it goes. I'll be honest, I'm not a big fan of the three divisions. I know it's good for the sport. You have more people winning, but I didn't like the state tournament for that reason. But I was able to go one of the first years it was moved to 3 classes. I was able to go to the state tournament, and it was, a lot different. Crowds weren't all into one match at a time or the other. It was kind of more sporadic than ever, but it's good. Hey, more guys can win and whatnot, and that's good for them.
For sure. And it's I never want to be like that guy looking back on the glory days, but when I get someone from Illinois on, I got to bring up those double A days, because it's just it gets me excited thinking about it. And now, obviously you're living your own life. You're out in North Carolina. Are you doing any coaching at wrestling or football these days, or are you businessman?
No, mainly a lot of business. I mean, a little bit of BJJ gym here, helping out on Tuesdays, but that's really it. I help donating to one of the local middle schools here. I have a good friend that is a coach at WC Friday. It's in Dallas, North Carolina, right across the way. I was actually just at their county tournament on Saturday, so I went and watched for about 2 hours or so to watch some of those guys and just get in the gym. You know how that is.
Yeah.
You miss the smell of that gym with mats on the floor and everyone all sweaty and whatnot, but nothing, no team affiliation really, just helping out with where I train now and kids that are competing, trying to be, more MMA based, teaching them some wrestling too. But I try to watch. I still keep up with all the college stuff, a little bit of high school, but really I just stick with the college and international. All the international success we've had in the last few years is just unbelievable. Watching that, I can't get enough of it. It's great to watch, David Taylor and Kyle Snyder and Dake and those guys. I know you had Dake on your show here. That was a pretty good one. And watching all those guys have success. Gable Stevenson at a young age,
Yeah.
It's pretty cool stuff. So I keep up with everything, just not as involved as, business keeps me pretty tied up.
Sure. And, your alma mater, Illinois, Poeta, new head coach, first year. We're all very excited about that. Tell me about just your thoughts about Poeta being the head man at Illinois.
It's, I'm so proud of him, just especially being pretty close with him. He's one of my, I'd say, best friends that I have. He means the world to me. It was a time going in when I was a freshman in college. I looked at him as someone to look up to. The guy taught me a lot about competing, wrestling, training, but also just the small things, how to be successful and make sure you're getting stuff done in life. And, I always bring up to people my list, to stay organized. That was the first guy that taught me how to look over every night, and he's making his list on the couch of what he has to accomplish the next day and stuff like that. So I learned a lot of just personal stuff. And I really think the guy is the funniest person I've ever met. I mean, that guy, if you get in the room with him, he doesn't stop talking. And it's just, he's a funny storyteller, great guy. And for his start at the helm of the wrestling program, I think they're in great hands. I think it's someone, he's so selfless. It's going to be all about the team, the university, and making sure guys are successful on and off the mat. They're good people. He's putting them in the right positions to succeed both on the mat and off the mat. And he's got a lot of people rooting for him, myself included. But I know the state and the wrestling community is very excited for him. So now it's just making gains, winning, and go from there.
But I just got to go back to the listing. So tell me about that. He was like, hey, this is how you get shit done. Make a list the night before, and it rubbed off on you.
Well, he found ways to rub off on me. It wasn't that he would necessarily tell me. It was, I'd ask him, hey, what are you doing? I'm making my list. So, that's my mentality. It's been my whole life. You find the people that are successful and figure out what they're kind of doing to make them that way. It's not by accident. It's not all luck, like some people think it is. Oh, that person's just lucky, or he was given these great genes or athletic abilities or something. Like, no, that's not it. There's people out there that are successful because of their preparation, their mindsets. And when I first time we had a little house party get together, the fall of my freshman year, we had a bunch of team member, pretty much the whole team over to watch a fight. It might have been a Floyd Mayweather fight. We all get together, and I sit right next to him, and he's making jokes, and not a lot of people are laughing, but I start laughing at everything he says. So he loved having me around, because no matter what he said, it was like, he was gonna help boost his himself up a little bit, and he loved having me around. But it was looking at him from, like you said, that list of here's what I got to do tomorrow. Okay, here's how I'm going to do it. Here's the order I'm going to do it in. And I'm not going to bed until that list, everything's checked off on it. And I think he was able to maximize his training, maximize his personal life because he was organized like that. And that was just one of the many things I stole from him. So
right.
Yeah, I was a sponge, and that was a good guy to have around to be a sponge.
You talk about someone who's got to be a great recruiter. Having Poet in the living room, with that charisma, that panaz walks in. I mean, that must be like the new lord of the living room. Yeah,
right. I just hope the parents aren't exhausted and just mentally just exhausted when he leaves. But no, he's just as good as they come. I mean, he's got a lot of great things. He can relate to pretty much everyone in some sense or another, and he shows that. So hopefully that good talk pays off, and we get some good recruits in and continue to do so. And like I said, once you're winning, more and more of that stuff will fall in line.
For sure, man. And we wish him the best of luck. Last question for you, John Dergo. I haven't asked this one in a while, but I used to ask everybody, how did wrestling change your life? Because you've had a lot of life experiences outside of the mat, unlike some of the guys we've had on.
Yeah, that's a great one. So how it changed my life is, one, it taught me how to persevere when times are not good, times are tough. And we've experienced that even with this pandemic, right? Well, our business still had to run. So we found you got to see people on a couple different sides, people that said, I don't have to go to work, or I'm not going to work, or I'm staying at home, or whatnot. Well, we still have a business to run, right? And we have to do it safely. So all the protocol that we implemented to make sure we do that is a lot of extra work, a lot of extra time. And where do you find that mentality? Because not everyone does have it, that mentality to, when things are getting tough, I got to dig a little bit deeper and make sure we get the job done. You learn that from hours in the wrestling room when it's not your day, but you have to figure out how to make it work, right? How to get that next takedown when you feel like crap, or you're wrestling a guy that's better than you. How do you figure that out when you're cutting all that weight and you have to go out there and perform in front of people? It's that same mentality. And I carried it through my career that I have right now, how to, accomplish things that when you're technically shouldn't be getting them done, you're able to find a way to get it done because you've been here before. Your mentality is battle tested. And that's, I couldn't, it's all, I attribute it all to the sport of wrestling, and just so grateful. I've had the opportunity, and I was, introduced to it at such a young level, at such a young age.
Well said, man. I love the comparison to the job life, to the work life, because most of us are never going to be college coaches or, RTC athletes. And so just love hearing that. Thanks for coming on, John Dergo. It's an honor, man. And shout out to our man, Danny Stelzer, giving us some love, giving us some introductions here. He's the man. He's brought a couple folks to the podcast, so got to give some love where it's due.
Oh, that's one of my brothers. I was just with him in his wedding a few months ago, and that's a great one. And another guy that'll do anything he can for you.
Love it. Well, John, thanks again, man. It's been an honor.
Ryan, great job too. I just want to say thank you, and great work with this podcast. It's awesome podcast to listen to, and you've had some of the best guys on here. So keep up the great work. Okay.
Thank you, sir. Will do.
And that's the end of Wrestling Changed My Life. We're proudly presented by Spartan Combat. Spartan Combat is a wrestling clothing company who sponsors athletes such as Kyle Dake, Yanni D, David Carr. Go to SpartanCombat.com to purchase gear or check out their national tournament taking place April in Jacksonville, Florida.